Welcome to another episode of the Gull Mouth Action Podcast, where we take a look at all the latest goings on at Brighton, Albion and Crawley Town. I'm Matt Polt, and this week I'm joined by Brighton writer Derren Howard, Crawley Town expert Mark Dunford and Sam Morton, who covers both the Seagulls and the Reds. It was a disappointing week in the league for our professional clubs in Sussex, as Brighton blew a 2-goal lead to draw 2-2 at home to Tottenham in the Premier League, while Crawley saw their unbeaten run come to an end in a dispiriting 4-0 defeat at Notts County in League Two. This week we'll pick over the bones of these two results, bring you all the team news ahead of Albion's and Crawley's next league games, and look back at Brighton's midweek Carabao Cup tie at Barnsley. You can read all the stories we're going to talk about, videos and pictures online at sussexworld.co.uk/sport. And we will start at the Amex, where Tottenham fought back from 2 goals down to secure a deserved point against Brighton. The Seagulls, who were second best for much of the match, found themselves 2-0 up after 31 minutes thanks to Yankuba Minta and Yassine Ayari. However, Richarlison halved the deficit just before half-time, and the equaliser came 8 minutes from time when Jan-Paul van Hecke turned Mohamed Kudus' cross into his own net. It sounds like it was another supremely frustrating afternoon, Derren. What did you make of Seagull's performance? And it might be stating the obvious, but that must feel like 2 points dropped for him.
Yeah, for sure. When the fans were coming away, that was the talk, that it was 2 points dropped. For me, I think they'll probably look back on it and think, when they analyse the actual game, they thought, well, maybe we actually got away with, getting a point out of that one, because Brighton never looked comfortable. They went 2 goals up, thanks to 2 moments of individual brilliance. Yankuba Minte's goal was excellent. Bearing down on the goalkeeper, showed great composure to round the keeper and then slot home after Jorginho's through ball. That was a great goal. And it was against the run of play, to be honest. They've been under pressure until that point. Then Yassine Ayari, he then popped up with this angled drive from about 25 yards, which deceived the Tottenham goalkeeper in the flight. The flight of the ball was moving all over the place, and it deceived the goalkeeper. But he probably should have saved it, really. But it was still a good goal. But for me, I think Thomas Frank's Tottenham, they look serious contenders this season. They're up to second, and I was really impressed with how they performed. They just suffocated the life out of Brighton. They just could not get away from them. They were literally swarming all over them, and any bit of space that Brighton had, they had to be at their sharpest and at their very best to try and beat the press and to get the attacks going forward. Which they did twice. But to be honest, Brighton really sort of battled. They struggled, and they just needed to see the game out just at the end of that first half. They were 2-0 up 10 minutes to go, and you could see it coming. They were getting sloppy. They were giving balls away. The likes of Mitoma, Baliba, Jorginho all gave the ball away. And Richarlison just got that goal just before the half-time, and it just changed everything. They just needed to keep the ball. And for me, I was saying to Sam afterwards, I think that's where Brighton need to improve, is in possession in the midfield and keeping the ball and just stop being sloppy. Like, they're a good team, Brighton, but for me, they're not good enough to challenge at the top 6. That's going to be where they fall down, I think, this season, because they can't keep the ball. They can't manage the game at the moment in these areas. And I think Tottenham, that performance against Tottenham highlighted that. But yeah, I'm sure it's something that they'll be working on. But at the moment, Brighton just aren't good enough to in those moments. Yeah.
Are we then maybe foregoing the idea of a potential European tilt then, Derren, if things carry on the way they... I know it's still very early, but...
It's still early. So they're 14th at the moment. They've got 5 points, but Chelsea are 6. They play Chelsea this weekend. They're 6, and they're only 3 points ahead of Brighton. So it can turn around pretty quickly. But for me, there's just so many sort of glaring problems with Brighton at the moment, where they've got so much individual talent, Mitoma, Minte, Jorginho, but just being more ruthless and just being better in possession in those sort of key moments and those key areas of the pitch is going to cost them, I think.
Absolutely. Well, Spurs' equaliser came in unfortunate circumstances and deflecting off Van Hecke's thigh. But Sam, do you think Brighton could have maybe attacked it a little bit more and gone on the front foot at 2-1? Or were they forced to kind of retreat into themselves and sit deep due to kudos from Richarlison, and then latterly substitutes Brennan Johnson and Xavi Simons.
There's bits of everything, really. I think Derren's covered it really well. I think Spurs were really impressive, and they really did make life very difficult for Brighton to play their best, to be honest. But there was a lot of sloppiness, and there's a lot of giving the ball away. We've obviously mentioned Carlos Baleba's poor form, and that did obviously continue. He was obviously substituted at half-time, and I'm going to discuss it a bit more soon. But he definitely wasn't up to scratch, and he was one of those players guilty of giving the ball away too easily, and that was allowing Spurs just to dominate proceedings, really. And it was it was a surprise to see Brighton take that 2-goal lead, because they really were second best, and it was remarkable that they did find themselves in that position, and you thought maybe that's a good opportunity to attack it, maybe score a third goal and put the game beyond Spurs. But Spurs did do really well to fight back and to get back into the game. And as you say, those substitutes made a huge difference. Xavi Simons, especially coming on at half-time, I thought he completely changed the game for Spurs. And he really did make a big impact. And again, really impressed by Spurs, and I think they'll definitely be finishing high up the table. And as of Brighton, I think a lot will depend on kind of bringing their key players back into form. I think Baleba's a big one. I think if you can get him firing and get him playing back to his best, things can look very different quite quickly, I think. When he's not playing well, it does seem to throw everything off kilt a little bit, because he's that good and he's that important. And that's why when there was talk of him going to Man United in the summer, it was just crucial they didn't allow him to leave unless it was for a huge amount of money, because it was just so late to try and find an ideal replacement for him. And his form is really showing why it's important that you've got him kind of firing on all cylinders, really. And he hasn't been up to his best at the moment. And fingers crossed he can rediscover that form that we saw last season.
Yeah, as Sam said, against Spurs, Carlos Baleba, who was linked during the summer transfer window with a rumoured £100 million plus move to Manchester United, continued his difficult start to the season and was substituted at half-time for the second time in 4 games. Why was the Cameroon international hooked at the break, do you think, Derren? And what has Fabian Hutzela had to say about the midfielders at the start of the season? Because been patchy, to say the least, I think.
Yeah, he has been patchy, and there was so much talk about him in the pretty much the press conference after the match was dominated by talk on Carlos Baleba and what's going on with him. It's nothing new. In all the games probably this season, his name has cropped up in the post-match press conferences, but it's been notable, the fall off in his performances. So it's sort of the obvious question to ask, and it keeps getting asked in the first few matches, but. There's no doubt about it in my mind that I think it did unsettle him. There was a lot of talk of this move to Manchester United, but for me, I don't know how serious this talk was for Manchester United. I think they brought in quite a few of the attacking players like Kuno and Buemo as well. And this Baleba link came quite late in the window, almost like an afterthought. It was like, oh yeah, shit, we need a midfielder. Let's get let's try and unsettle this lad, the guy from Brighton and get him in. And it didn't seem as though there was a plan right from the start of the window for Manchester United to really go for it. Yeah. And then Brighton, thinking, if you want him, then you're going to have to pay a serious amount of money because this is going to disrupt us so late in the window. And Brighton were adamant that it was going to be Moises Caicedo type money, 100 million plus, and United backed away. And whether they will come back, in January or next summer, we'll have to wait and see. But I think it did get to Baleba, and it has affected his performances. He had a knee injury as well in pre-season, so he had a bit of a disrupted pre-season. But against Tottenham, he started the first 20 or 30 minutes, Sam. He probably looked as though he had done in patches a bit towards last season. He seemed back to his best, but then really tired towards the end of the first half. And
he seemed to look really leggy quite quickly, didn't he?
He did. He really, really faded. And Hutzela said afterwards that he wasn't tracking back. He wasn't going with his runners, and he looked physically not great. And I wasn't surprised to see him hooked at half-time. He was against Everton as well. He came off at half-time. But it's a tough one because I guess Hutzela wants to give him the minutes to play his way back into form. But also at the moment he's a bit of a liability against teams who, you know, are really on you, like Tottenham and like Everton were at the Hill Dickinson. But when he is on it, he's one of the best midfielders in the Premier League, and Brighton need him, especially with Hinchelwood out for the next couple of months. And he has something that no other Brighton player does. So, you know, he has that X factor, and Brighton need him back to his best, hopefully starting this Saturday against Chelsea.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I think you're 100% right with the fact that United didn't really have a plan, Derren, because once they moved on for Believer, I believe they made a move for Conor Gallagher. It didn't seem to be any sort of structure in their thinking, which unfortunately looks like it's unsettled Believer, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, had a knock on, had a knock on effect. But whether they come back for him in the next window, it'd be interesting to see whether he is a long-term target for them, or if he was someone that they wanted just to fill a gap. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Fingers crossed he sets his sights higher. I think he can do better than Man United at the moment, but we shall see. Tuesday evening saw Albion travel to League One outfit Barnsley in the third round of the Carabao Cup. By all accounts, Sam, it sounded quite a successful evening for the Seagulls. What did you make of their performance, and how did they get on?
It couldn't have gone much better, to be honest. Those travelling fans those travelling Brighton fans who made the 238-mile trip were rewarded with 6 goals, and some exceptional ones at that as well. Diego Gomez was a man possessed, scoring 4 goals, including 3 in the first 33 minutes of the match. The second goal was brilliant. He kind of ran onto it and put an unstoppable shot into the roof of the net. The third one was one of the greatest goals I think ever scored by a Brighton player, to be honest. It was absolutely incredible.
The second goal was better than the third goal.
Do you think?
Technically, to hit it coming across him like that with his right foot into that top corner across the keeper. Second one, keeper in no man's land. I could have scored that one. In fact, I did against a college from Bournemouth when I was at St Vincent College. I scored a 30-yard volley exactly like that. But the keeper was right off his line. Anyone could have scored that.
Controversial. I think the third one was incredible. The swerve he got on it. You saw it from the behind him, the angle that showed the ball, the movement on it.
It was a good strike.
Both.
Yeah, it was absolutely incredible for me. And he was obviously full of confidence after his first 2 goals, and just felt that everything he touched would go in, and that's how it proved, really. It was quite incredible to see. And yeah, I don't think Barnsley really knew what hit them, because they didn't actually play badly, to be honest. I think Brighton obviously scored 2 worldies, 3-0 up, and then the game was obviously gone at that point, and they just really put their foot on the gas in the second half and added more goals. It was great to see Harry Howe involved in the goals as well. A really nice moment for him. Yasin Ayari, he's got a bit of a nose for goal at the moment as well. I think he scored for Sweden in international break, and then he obviously got a goal against Spurs and now a goal against Barnsley as well. So that's good to see players chipping in from midfield. Tommy Watson getting a couple of assists as well, which is really great to see. I think it bodes well for Brighton, obviously, because they've now won back-to-back 6-0 wins in the Cup, which I understand is the record. That's never been done in the League Cup, which is as meaningless as a stat as you could probably get, to be fair. But it does go to show that Brighton are obviously taking this competition seriously. And you can say they're obviously bullying the smaller teams, but it's often not as easy as it looks to win these games so easily, to be honest. We've seen obviously some upsets, even Man United losing to Grimsby this season. We saw Plymouth beat Liverpool last year. Not too much of a shock, but Plymouth beating Liverpool last season. I think they pushed Man City quite close as well. So you never really know what's going to happen in the Cup. If you don't get an early goal, it can become quite tense and nervy. So fair play to Brighton for making it look quite easy so far, and hopefully it will continue, because it would be great if they can get some silverware. To be honest, I think that's got to be a real aim for Brighton this season with the squad depth they now have. They're really making a good go of it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. And sticking on that, when will the draw for the 4th round be made? At the time of recording, I know that we've got some more games to be played, but who could Brighton potentially face in the next round?
Yes, so the draw is due to be after Wednesday night's matches. You would expect Man City, Arsenal, Newcastle and Spurs all to put their names in the hat for the next round. Already there are Cardiff, Fulham, Chelsea, Wickham, Wolves, Wrexham Liverpool. So it's a big name sitting there, and there'll be some interesting ties either way, I think. And I think Brighton will just be hoping for something a bit closer than Barnsley, to be honest. It wasn't an ideal Tuesday night fixture, but fair play to the ones that made the trip. And they obviously, as I say, they were rewarded with a great win. So yeah, we'll see who they get. I'm looking forward to seeing the draw.
Yeah, but do we not want Wrexham, I think? We want to avoid that circus, or are we going to... Yeah, we're happy to avoid that? Yeah, not ahead. Good.
Yeah, I think so.
Albion will be reunited with several familiar faces at Chelsea on Saturday. I've probably forgotten a few players here, but the Blues boast former Seagulls, João Pedro, Moises Caicedo, Mark Cucurella and Robert Sanchez, and Facundo Buonanotte, who I believe won't be able to play. Is that right? As he's on loan?
Yeah, no, he's loan locked. So that's part of the deal. When he went to Chelsea, he won't be able to play against Brighton.
Right, excellent. Thank you for clarifying that. Well, they sit sixth in the Premier League, but enjoyed a torrid time at Man United last weekend, going down 2-1 Old Trafford after Sanchez was shown an early red card for a silly tackle, to say the least. It's another tough game for Brighton, Derren, but I think that the Seagulls can certainly cause Chelsea some problems. How do you see this one going, and what's the latest injury news from the Albion camp?
Yes, it's a game that, obviously Crystal Palace is one of the first games that the Brighton fans look towards, but I think Chelsea is a close second these days because of all the transfer dealings and the money that's changed hands between the two. There's always a great stat that the Chelsea money has more than paid for the Amex Stadium and the whole of the Lancing training ground for the money that they've paid to get the likes of Caicedo, Pedro, Graham Potter, even Moises Caicedo and Sanchez. So Brighton have done pretty well out of the arrangement, and they've kept, they've stayed competitive as well. They've sold their best players to Chelsea, but managed to stay competitive. And it's a game that they love to win. They'd love to put one over Chelsea again. So it's one really looking forward to. A lot of the fans are looking forward to. As you mentioned, Rob Sanchez won't be playing. He received a red card against Man United last time out, so he sits out with a 3-match suspension. Caicedo and Pedro are also injury doubts as well. Maresca spoke about that earlier in the week ahead of their game against Lincoln in the Cup, and so that's going to be an interesting one to see if Caicedo and Pedro play. But just in case Brighton fans are worried they won't have anybody to boo, I'm sure Mark Cucurella will be there as well. So they can always just vent all of their frustration on Cucurella. He'll probably play. Facundo Buonanotte, as you mentioned, he's on loan to Chelsea, but he's unable to play as part of the condition of his loan. He got his first goal for Chelsea actually yesterday, scored the winner against Lincoln City in the Carabao Cup. So he won't be playing. But as far as Brighton are concerned, I hope to have Maxime de Kuyper back, the left back. He's missed the last couple of games after he was shoved into the advertising boardings at Bournemouth. He's injured his knee, but he's hoping to be back. Matt Swiffer, he's the right back. He played the last few minutes against Tottenham, so he could be back in contention as well. Jack Hinchwood remains sidelines. He's going to be out for the next couple of months with his ankle injury, and Solly March and Adam Webster are the long-term absentees as well. So yeah, Brighton will be at full strength. It'll be very interesting to see if Diogo Gomez plays ahead of Carlos Baleba at Stamford Bridge this weekend as well. I'm pretty sure Yassin Ayari will be in the midfield, so it's probably going to be between Baleba now and Gomez for that second midfield slot. He played in a slightly more advanced position against Barnsley. He usually plays a deeper role. So, yeah, it'll be an interesting decision for Herzella as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Best of luck to Brighton on Saturday. Now we will turn our attention to Crawley Town, who saw their 3-match winning streak come to an end at Notts County in League 2 on Saturday. Goals from Scott Robertson, Alassane Jatta and Tyrese Horsbrace earned the Magpies a resounding 4-0 win at Meadow Lane. I think we said it would be a tough game, Mark, but we didn't predict such a heavy defeat. You took this one in, and it sounded like an utterly miserable afternoon for everyone involved at Crawley Town.
It was an afternoon to forget, definitely, for everyone. It was pretty poor. I mean, the first half, it was sort of like Derren was saying about Brighton. They let that goal in before half-time. If Notts County hadn't scored just before half-time, it could have been a different story. But there were no signs that Crawley were going to go out and pull off a shock victory or whatever. Oh, it wouldn't have been a shock victory, but a victory. But, I mean, they were in it. And even up to like the 70th minute, it was only 1-0 and they were in it, but they just didn't look like they were ever going to score a goal. There was no real threat. I think they only had 2 shots in target in the whole game. And it was just, I mean, we're going to get on to what Lindsay said, but he said there wasn't a lot of, he said it wasn't a lot of commitment from the players. He didn't seem to have that sort of drive or anything. For a team that have just won 3 games on the trot, it was quite poor. I mean, I was surprised that Ryan Loft and Keane Dixon didn't start. He stuck with the same side that beat Cheltenham the week before. And I don't know if that's a little bit of loyalty, thinking, or is it just, well, we won with that team, why would we change it? And you get why a manager wants consistency and all that. But maybe he's thinking, oh, maybe I did get that a bit wrong. But it wasn't very good. And they need to bounce back this week and put in something, because you said there was 250 fans, I think, made the trip up there. And I would have been furious. I saw one comment where one guy said, he said, I spent 200 quid on a hotel, probably the same in petrol money and food and drink, all for that. What a waste. So, but these things happen, don't they? I remember in the promotion winning season, was it they let in 6 at Swindon, I think, in that season.
Yeah, I think so.
Away at Swindon. And they had some big defeats on the road then as well. So, these things happen. Hopefully it's just a blip in the road.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And as Mark alluded to, Scott Lindsay was furious after the Reds' performance in Meadow Lane. He said Crawley served up tripe and said Reds fans should be throwing things at him after that performance. It's good honesty, I guess, from Lindsay, but will that salve any wounds? Because, as Mark said, you spent a lot of money to go up to Nottingham and be served up that. I'd still be pretty livid if I was a Crawley fan.
Yeah, no, I'd be pretty livid too. But I'm sure they're probably pleased to hear that honesty from the manager. I think probably nothing worse than seeing that and then see the manager try and make excuses or things like that, because that would probably make fans even more angry, to be honest. So it's good to see him own up to it. And just to say exactly what comments he made, he said, honestly, I'm so angry that we've given that tripe to watch in many ways, because those goals are just disgusting and no fan should have to travel this amount of distance and watch that. But he said the fans are brilliant, the guys over there, they're just class, they don't deserve that. And I don't deserve the fans after that, really. I don't deserve their appreciation of me after that rubbish. They should be throwing things at me, for the truth. Be known, but I love them. And as I say, I think it's refreshing to hear Lindsay be that honest. And we know that he does. He doesn't hold back when he's angry, does he? We've seen it a few times in the past. And I'm sure if he's this angry in public, he would have been absolutely livid behind the scenes. I can only imagine what you're saying to the players after that. And I'm sure he'll ensure that the performance isn't repeated again. And those loyal fans, I'm sure, won't be deterred from making the next long trip as well. Because, they're obviously great fans. Obviously, Crawley have got that do follow home and away. So, fingers crossed it doesn't.
You don't hear the word tripe enough, do you? You want to hear the word tripe more often.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I was going to ask, Mark, was Lindsay's summation of that performance correct? Was it not too over? Because I think this is the strongest I've heard him let into his players. Was that par for the course? Do they deserve those words, Crawley?
Probably, yeah, because once they went 2-0 down, it was pitiful. There was no fight. They just gave up and heads dropped and, people weren't reacting. They weren't committed to getting into tackles and that, and they were just completely overrun by Notts County. And you could send the Notts County sensed blood as soon as they scored their second. They just went for it. So I don't think it's too overboard. I think there was another thing he said in another story I wrote. I think he said something like, I spend so much time planning how we're going to play, what the tactics and all that. And he said that I wasted my time. I just wasted my time this week doing all that work. So no, I don't think it was over the top. Like I say, it's just refreshing to hear a manager do that, because there's so many media trained people out there. They try to take the blame themselves. I mean, he obviously has taken a bit of blame himself, but to go after the players like that, I think if when they play like that, they should get that. So
Fair enough. Well, Crawley midfielder Geraldo Badrami endured a nightmare return to Notts County, one of his former clubs. He too was also very honest in his appraisal of the Reds' performance. What did Badrami have to say to start, Mark? And did any Reds players come through that game with any credit in the bank, or was it they should all hang their heads in shame after that one?
Not quite all of them, I don't think. I mean, I'll start with what Badrami said. He said the lads were a bit sloppy today at times. They looked a little nervous out there, and the scoreline reflected that. You have your off days and whatnot, but I don't think there's much of an excuse for today. I don't think we were bad in parts, but then the gaffer said to us in the changing room, we did a few out of character stuff second half, a few things that we would never do in training. So I'm not sure why we're doing that in games. And he said the scoreline reflected that. But because Badrami's been really good since he's come in, actually. He's sort of someone who came in right at the end of the transfer window, and I think he's been quite a surprise. He's with Jay Williams out injured. I think he's going to be key in that sort of central midfield role in the sort of slightly defensive alongside Carl Scott. But it's funny because myself and Ron Alderman of this parish, he watched it as well, and he was doing the player ratings, and we were sort of discussing, and he was like, "How low can I go?" sort of thing. And we always try to be quite positive. I always, when I do player ratings, a bit sort of behind the curtain here, I always start with a 7 and then go from there. But I think the lowest mark we gave was a 6, and there was a couple of 6s. But Harvey Davis, Ron kind of wanted to give him an 8, because in the first half, Harvey Davis did keep them in the game. He pulled off some really good saves. But at the end of the day, he let in 4. I don't think any of the goals were particularly his fault. So I said, you've got to knock him down to a 7. You can't have a goalkeeper letting in 4 and give him 8 out of 10. But he did pull off some great saves. Harry McCurdy, he tried really hard and looked like the most likely to create anything or score a goal. But it was just a final ball. And like I said, there was 2 shots on target in the end, I think. It was disappointing. Even Kaheem Dixon and Ryan Loft, when they came on, I thought they could spark something, but Ryan Loft missed Crawley's best chance, shot over from about 8 yards. Dixon didn't seem fully on his game. So, I think Harvey Davis and Harry McCurdy are the only 2 that sort of came out of it with any credit at all, really.
The Reds will hope to get back on the winning trail when they host Barrow this Saturday. The Bluebirds sit 19th in League 2, 1 point and 2 places above Crawley. How do you see this one going, Sam? I noticed that Barrow may well be on a bit of a high after beating Crewe 1-0 at home last weekend.
Yes, they did snap their dismal 4-match losing run with a resolute victory, it sounds like. I think Crewe dominated possession and had more shots on goal, but it was the host who got the all-important goal, and it sounds like it was deserved for their resilience they showed in the game, and obviously they have been on a terrible run of form. So it's really important for them to get that win. It sounds like the match was in terrible conditions as well. Really, really important for them to get over the line, and I'm sure they'll be looking to follow that up at Crawley. And as I say, Barrow were previously beaten 5-0 by Blackpool in the EFL Trophy, and before that they were beaten by Bristol Rovers, Swindon and Fleetwood, and they've won 3 and lost 6 this season with no draws. So of course that all points to a draw at Crawley on Saturday. So we'll see how it goes. But I think Crawley have got to be looking at this as a game they need to be winning, especially after the result they've just had. It's a game that, I think if they're playing well, they should win. Time will tell, but I'm sure both teams will be just as desperate as each other to get 3 points on the day. So it could see them cancel each other out.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Finally, Mark, what is the latest injury news from the Crawley camp? How are they looking ahead of the visit of Barrow?
Yeah, it's looking quite good, actually, because obviously they made, 10 changes for the EFL Trophy game in midweek as well. So a lot of players have got a lot of minutes, and that was a chance to get a cut. Like Gavin Houlihan he missed that EFL Trophy game, but he played on Saturday as a sub. He had an ankle injury, I think. But he should be back fine. Jay Williams, we know, is out for a long time. I think that Lindsay said last week they're targeting Gillingham away on November the 15th, I think it is, for Williams' return. But like Scott said, Williams will want to play next week if he could. But they're going to manage that quite carefully because he's had a bit of a knee injury issue for quite a while now. I think even in the promotion winning season, he played through some injury to his knee. And Danny Cashman, they're not sure of when he's going to be back. He's got a facial injury, not facial in the foot.
I see.
I think is it at the bottom of the foot, and he's saying he can't accelerate with the pain, and kicking the ball as well can cause a bit of pain in that. So they're working on that, seeing what they can do with that, but there's no time frame on him. So Cashman and Williams definitely out. But the rest of the team look like they're sort of are available. And last week, Lindsay said it's clear in his head what the team should be to play Notts County, assuming that was because of the win against Cheltenham, etc. But this week, you'd imagine there will be changes after that Notts County performance. So it's going to be interesting who comes in. But there's plenty of choices. Ben Radcliffe, he scored 2 goals against Aston Villa and played really well against Aston Villa. We haven't seen him in the league this year. He could be in for him. But looking at the back four, you've got Davis, Flint, Conroy and Barker. I can't see that changing anytime soon, to be honest. So unlikely to see Radcliffe be in, but I think he had an injury at the start of the season, so he's back. So So it is, So Williams and Cashman are the only ones who are definitely out, but unless there's any sort of thing from the Notts County game, I'm assuming everyone else will be fit and ready to go.
Excellent, good news. Well, best of luck to Crawley against Barrow at the weekend. And as tradition, we'll do our score predictions before we finish this episode. Starting with Chelsea v Brighton in the Premier League on Saturday. Derren, how do you see this one going? I'm going to get my predictions out of the way for both Chelsea, Brighton and Crawley Barrow. I'm going for a pair of 1-1 draws. I think I can't see a winner in either of them. But we'll start with Chelsea, Brighton. How do you see this one going?
I think Brighton, they're going to respond. I'm going to go for 2-1 for Brighton. Yeah. Diego Gomez.
Sam, do you share Derren's confidence?
I don't think I do, actually. I think because Chelsea will be looking to bounce back after that. Yeah, pretty dismal defeat against Man United. A dreadful game, it really was, especially the second half. Neither team played well. I think they'll be looking to bounce back. I think Chelsea might edge this one, 2-1.
And finally, Mark, what do you reckon?
Was it last year they got battered in the first half at Chelsea?
Yes.
I fear. So I'm going to go for 3-2. I think it'll be Chelsea will go steaming into a 3-0 lead. Brighton will bounce back, but won't quite do enough, I don't think. So I'm going for Chelsea win 3-2.
If, say, Brighton were to lose, Derren, where would that leave Hertzela in terms of the supporters' feelings about him?
Yeah, I've mentioned it before. Internally, I don't think there's a huge amount of pressure on him at the moment. I think if it gets to the point where they're around Christmas, January, February time, and they're way off the pace for Europe, I think then questions can be asked, and probably quite rightly. They've got a good squad. That they're not playing sort of like game and game. So they should be performing better. But for me, I think he's doing okay. The performances have been good. The away performances haven't been great, but hopefully that can change against Chelsea. But it's an interesting one. The fans have never really sort of, they're quite split on him at the moment. So defeat wouldn't be good in terms of the mood of the fans, but I don't think his job's under sort of serious threat.
Yeah, fingers crossed for a good result for Brighton. And finally, Crawley v Barrow. Mark, again, as I said, I could see that being the draw.
Yeah, the Barrow never an easy side to play. I remember they had a good season in the when Crawley got promoted, and they came to Crawley and got a draw. I think Crawley only needed a draw in that night, sort of thing. But it's always a tough game. But I think Crawley will have enough to beat them, and I'm going to go for a tight 1-0 win.
Tight 1-0 win. Sam, do you share Mark's confidence again? And do you reckon we will see not wholesale changes, but do you reckon we'll see a few changes from Scotland?
I think we'll see. Yeah, I think we'll definitely see a few changes. I can't imagine he'll let the same team go again for this one. He'll be given some opportunity to different players to impress, I imagine. And I mentioned it a bit before. I think it'll be a draw. I think it's going to be two teams cancelling each other out, and it'll be 1-1.
Yeah. Derren, finally, what do you reckon is going to happen at the Broadfield Stadium on Saturday?
Yeah, I think they'll respond well from the previous game. So I'm going to go for 1-0 Crawley. Yeah, I'm going to think they can bounce back.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Best of luck to both Brighton and Crawley this weekend, and thank you very much for joining us this week, chaps. Don't forget you can catch up with all the latest sports news covering everything we've talked about today at sussexworld.co.uk/sport. Thank you very much for listening and or watching, and we will see you all next week.